I am mindful, more than you can imagine, of the fact that my own country was the architect, was the author of this great tragedy. In the building in which I have sat for 23 years, I have to pass every day the room in which a British statesman, Mr. Balfour, in 1917, promised on behalf of one people to a second people, who, by the way, were every one of them, every one of these Zionist leaders was an atheist. They laid no biblical claim to the land then. They were ready then to make their European settler state, their colonial state, in any place in the world they could get their hands on. They negotiated for their state to be in Uganda, in Patagonia, in the Seychelles. None of them claimed that God was an estate agent and had promised them the land of Palestine then. That came later. Mr. Balfour promising a second people who didn't represent the majority, in fact represented a tiny minority of Jews in the world at that time. Land which belonged to a third people, even by the standards of imperialism. This was a brazen act. Britain gave away a land which it did not yet even possess to another people. At that time, 1/5 of the world's area, 1/4 of the world's population was governed from that little building in my little country. 1/4 of all the world. Britain had an empire, it was said, so vast that upon it the sun never set. Though, as my Irish grandfather used to say, that's because God would never trust the British in the dark. This act by Balfour, who, by the way, didn't do this out of love for the Jews. Balfour actually hated Jews. He was an anti-Semite. He wanted the Jews to leave England so he would never have to look on their faces again. You don't have to love Jews to be a Zionist. Most Zionists are not Jews. In the United States of America, the vast majority of Zionists are not Jews. They're crazed, fundamentalist Christians. Although real Christians believe in the prophets, peace be upon them, most of those believe in the prophets and how to get a piece of them. That's a major difference. Anybody who thinks George W. Bush loved Jews has never visited his golf club down in Texas. Balfour gave this promise because he wanted what he called a loyal little Ulster, like the north of Ireland. He wanted to implant a colonial enterprise to keep the Arabs divided and weak, the better, so that imperialism could steal their things. That's why they did it. It wasn't about religion. And we must never make it about religion. We say we demand the land back. We demand the land back, and we demand the right of the people to return to the land. And as Rami said in his wonderful poem earlier, we're not threatening to push anyone into the sea. Jews, Muslims and Christians can live on the land, but only as equal citizens before the law and not as superior citizens.